Hello and welcome to The Green Door Life. My name is Shannon Morse, and we're doing these segments right now as we're going through this incredible time. Today is March 26th of 2020, and we are deep in the thick of the coronavirus. So what we're doing right now is we're really looking to support everyone with a variety of tools from amazing professionals that we have in our personal networks, our professional networks. And today I get to be here with my lovely friend who I actually haven't been able to see in person for like 7 years, maybe 6 years.
It hasn't been that long. No.
No? Are you sure?
Yeah, I think it's like 5.
Okay, sorry. I like to over-exaggerate sometimes. But so Jill and I have been friends. We used to do personal training together. I used to be able to kick her butt every once in a while, which was super fun. So what's amazing today is that I really wanted her to come on and give us some insight in terms of self-care. Jill is a family and marriage therapist, so she really specializes in trauma as well. But I'm gonna let you kind of share more about yourself, but we're really looking to give you guys today is some more tools about how you interact with your family, how you interact with your relationships, and how you interact with yourself around this time. Like, what can we actually do in terms of a psychological perspective, and like really having tools to move through this with as much grace and ease as physically possible. Mm-hmm. So I will introduce you guys now to Jill. Jill, say hello for us.
Hello, Green Door Life community. Hello. Shannon, did you want me to introduce myself further?
Yes, please.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, like Shannon mentioned, I'm a marriage and family therapist. I used to be based in the Bay Area and recently moved to San Diego. Well, not so recently anymore, but about a year and a half ago, moved down to San Diego. And while I do specialize in trauma work, I have worn a multitude of hats, much like our lovely host has also. And basically, I work a lot with trauma, wellness, co-occurring issues such as like, depression and substance abuse or eating disorders and drug dependence, things like that. And also a lot of wellness around basically having kind of a healthy mind in conjunction with your body. And essentially a lot of what kind of is coming out around not only physical and emotional wellness, but just overall well-being is really how we manage our stress, cope with our stress, and how we kind of even think about our daily lives and kind of feel our way through. Because as I think all of us know, getting out of bed someday to do an early workout is just like I just don't know if I can do it. But being able to kind of reframe it for yourself of how you can get out of bed and do it, and really set the tone for your day, can really make just a dramatic difference in very small ways. So that's a lot of kind of what I do down here. I still have a lot of clients in the Bay Area that I see via telehealth that work at a lot of large companies, and working with them also kind of even just on the work-life balance piece, which I think we can all acknowledge can be a challenge sometimes. Like, where do we find self-care, and how do I even go and kind of make that workout happen? How can I be the best parent, mom, dad, wife, husband, and coworker that I can be? And sometimes finding it a struggle to do all of those things and not feeling like we're failing others or failing ourselves. So, and that's a lot of kind of what comes up in the people that I work with.
Oh, so good. And this is perfect because, as we work with our clients, which I think is maybe perhaps some of the same demographic, it's such an apparent thing. And especially now as people are trying to find that work-life balance.
Yes.
And so now just everything's been thrown up in the air, and we're all going through, like all of us are going through these emotions and these experiences of, okay, now what does my day look like?
Right.
Like, now what does my work-life balance look like? And as we were kind of talking earlier about, now what does my work-life balance look like with kids at home who need homeschooling? Like, what?
Yeah.
So, and you have babies, right?
Yes, I have one right now, but
okay, cool.
luckily the structured school piece isn't as necessary because she's just a little over 2, but the need for constant entertainment and running around in energy, and still trying to make sure that, you know, it can be really tempting for me and for, I imagine, every other parent to want to plop their kid in front of a screen or a movie all day, just so they can actually get work done or do different things. And then also in trying to recognize that that's probably not the best thing that, you know, we can do for them. So it's super tricky. But luckily we've been able to work it out where I can actually like sit with clients and meet with them at this point. So
what have you guys done both inside of your family structure, and then what are some of the things that you shared with your clients around this with kids working at home and just moving through that?
So my situation is a tiny bit different, just because my husband is a physician, so he can't work from home. He is still required to like go to work, and not having care like really isn't an option. And so we've had to try to work it out with a friend that had a nanny. So we've kind of jumped on a nanny share, but we only have that for like another week. And so then it's like, okay, well then we need to, both of us, and also given my actual profession, and I moonlight at a hospital, I'm also considered an essential professional. So I still have to go into work. So I can't leave her home alone. So we've had to kind of really cobble together some stuff. And that's required us like reaching out to our community, working with our friends for support, because they're kind of in a similar boat, also being in healthcare. And so it does require getting creative and, you know, utilizing your resources and reaching out to friends like, hey, where can we find a daycare? You know, and also being mindful of the fact that we don't want to expose other people. And it's just, it gets really tricky. So there's a part of me that almost wishes at times that, you know, we both just had to work from home and figure it out. Like the kids are going to be here and we need to kind of figure out what's going on. And we're going to be here. But one of the things that I've really been working with clients on that have been in these situations where they've had their kids at home and they need to work from home, especially at, you know, a lot of the larger companies like, you know, Google and Facebook and pretty much everywhere now is like shelter in place, you're working from home. Is one, finding separate spaces, I think is super important. And I know sometimes in the Bay Area, it's really tricky given, you know, maybe you live in a 1-bedroom apartment, and you know, so finding a space with a door is a little more complicated. But, you know, establishing a space that you both can have to do your work separately, is super important, and setting it up in a way that feels purposeful and meaningful. Like maybe that means ordering a tiny desk. Maybe that means putting up some things that make it feel more like an office and that you're being efficient and effective, and that you respect each other's space. Like you're not just going to go barging into your partner's office, you know, because you have a question, but maybe send them a text message, but you're not just gonna be like, I'm just going to go in the other room, because that makes it feel more like a work environment. If you have kids at home that you're having to homeschool, it's really going to be about structure, and having amazing communication and coordination with your partner on what that structure is going to look like. It's going to involve having to take turns. It's going to involve needing to carve out an hour of time for yourself so you can take care of yourself. And I know that a lot of people are like, oh, well, that's superfluous. Like, who has time for that? I cannot stress how important that is right now in this situation. And whether that means just even going outside and taking a walk or setting aside time to eat lunch. All of those things are extremely important, because I think, unfortunately, Shannon, like you and I were talking about, this is not something that's going to be a couple of weeks. We're more than likely looking at a couple of months. And so how do we not get extremely depressed or anxious or stressed over this piece? And setting up a structured schedule for yourself with your partner, and also setting up a structure and daily schedule for your kids is the main first step on being able to feel like you're maintaining some sort of control over what's happening in your daily life.
Yes. So much yes to that. I think just to speak to that, Jeff and my partner and I basically said what our hours were going to be. Mm-hmm. And we communicated that we will not be able to check in with each other in detail while we're during our work hours.
Right.
So we would save that for afterwards, which is kind of speaking into what you're sharing. And then afterwards, we're going on a walk outside. Mm-hmm. To get out of our environment, have like a little bit of a break Like, okay, this is our buffer from then when we transition into the evening, which will be when we share time together and do whatever, like little loose ends that might need to be done. But there is a break. So there's your work time and then there's your end time. And then, man, I think that so many people are going through like this anxiety right now, which I feel like is coming at us in waves. And like we were speaking about, especially with the media and the news, and kind of looking at, you know, how to kind of give people insights on how to structure their news intake as well. Because some of us will just watch it whenever we can because we're staying in that mindset of like, okay, I need to know what's happening because I need to be kept up to date. And so I feel like the news is such a big area of where we really start to just hold that anxiety in our body.
Right.
So when you look at that stuff with news, what's your take on all of that and what to do?
So I think it's a really fine balance between wanting to stay informed and then also traveling really quickly down the rabbit hole. And also what seems to be really unique about this is not only this is, you know, I think the first global pandemic that most of us have experienced in our lifetimes, but the way in which we get information and news is just pretty much from anywhere and a million outlets, and it's just all very instantaneous. And so for some people that means, hey, you know what, maybe turning off the notifications on your phone, you know, little things that we don't even realize that we're waking up to, because a lot of us, for example, use our cell phones as our alarms. So when it goes off in the morning and you see like all of these notifications from the news and you're like, wow, it can be a really anxiety provoking and overwhelming way to start your day. And, you know, I think setting aside a little bit of time in, you know, for example, if it works for you in the morning while you are getting ready for the day or, you know, having a cup of coffee, giving yourself like, you know, 15 minutes to read through the news, and then that's it. And then putting it away and then maybe doing a news recap at the end of the day. And I know it's hard because information is so instantaneous and there's constant updates. And at the same time, like there's also the information overload where we just get flooded with stuff and we can't process it all. And so what comes up within our inability to process all this information that we feel is so important is just tons of anxiety and feeling very out of control. And that, and also when you incorporate the misinformation that goes around out there, it's really confusing on even what threads do I grab a hold of? What threads do I incorporate into my own life? So also being mindful of your news sources is going to be an important part of that.
Oh, yes. So I'm loving what I'm hearing so far because it basically you're giving us a structure. So I'm just kind of going to reflect the structure back slightly. So it is like self-care wherever you can get it. So planning that into your day, some sort of self-care, looking at your work situation at home. And if you have a partner and you're living with that partner, then looking to have separate work areas and then maybe communicate your schedules and have that open communication. Right. And then if you have kids, openly communicate with your partner and with your kids, if they're old enough, what exactly it's going to look like so they can anticipate that and it's all in agreement. And with news, really like picking your times during the day, like doing a little check-in in the morning, doing a check-in in the evening sounds so not only effective because you're kind of getting the highlights in the morning and then the check-in at the evening just in case you missed anything throughout the day. So then you're not bombarded with all that information and not being able to effectively process it, because that's really where we find that like buildup of over input. Too much input.
It's way too much input.
Yes.
Way too much input.
I'm lucky because basically Jeff filters all the news for me and then just gives me what he feels like is applicable.
Yeah. And I mean, if you have a trusted partner to do that, I think that's great. But relying on Ricky's cousin on the other side of the country and his post on Facebook to give you accurate news around the coronavirus, I probably wouldn't recommend that.
No, I agree with that. No, probably not a good idea. Or the memes for that matter.
No.
All the memes that are floating by.
Yeah, there's been some really good memes. I've passed this actually along to a lot of mom friends, kind of the first week that or is it Giphy? I don't know. Is it? I'm like Jif peanut butter, whatever it is. But yeah, but it's basically this dog, a cartoon dog, sitting at a table in his kitchen, holding a cup of coffee, and his entire house around him is going up in flames, and the dog is just sitting there, and it's just like, this is fine. It's kind of like this radical acceptance that there's this chaos that's happening all around you, and this is your new reality, and it's kind of like, well, okay, don't really know what I'm going to do here, and I just have to accept this. This is what's going on.
Which I think if all of us can get to where that dog is right now, we're going to have a much better time.
We're going to feel a lot better about our own stuff, that's for sure.
Right, exactly. And then that was kind of bringing me into the other topic that we were starting to move into earlier about the element of control, you know, mm-hmm. that we really, like you were talking about grief in a way, and I loved how you were explaining that. So if we could kind of cover that again, that would be amazing, because we have all kind of felt these waves of whether it shows up as sadness or anger or anxiety or grief, but it is a loss of something. Mm-hmm. And just acknowledging that is really powerful, and giving ourselves the space to acknowledge it.
Yeah. And I think, you know, grief as a therapist, I can tell you is really tricky because it shows up differently in everyone. Like, you can be like, oh, there's the 5 stages of grief. And, you know, anyone who has been working with grief over the years will tell you, yeah, the 5 stages is a lovely, very loose framework. And there's a whole lot of other stages and emotions that go in there too. And so more so kind of around this piece, you know, the pieces you identified around, you know, anger, and also denial is a big one that comes in. Oh, this is not that bad, or it's not going to last that long. And that actually prevents us from accepting it a lot sooner, is that, okay, yeah, this might be our present reality for a while. And so kind of what are you going to do with that? But, you know, more so honoring the fact that life is different and it sucks, especially I know for a lot of people, like experiencing milestones this year, like, you know, it's going to be a kindergarten graduation, or your kid graduating from high school, or someone's getting married. You know, all of these things that have been pushed around and pushed back. And so there's the scramble stress of just trying to kind of put those fires out. And then the acknowledgement of like, oh, wow, that's not happening. And that feels really crappy, and that sucks. And what do I do with that? And, or there's just even the loss, like we talked about earlier, of the daily routine of like finally having found that kind of work-life balance. And then all of a sudden, just kidding, like now you get to be a teacher, a coworker, like all of these different things that people really didn't sign up for. And so, you know, having to kind of figure out what that means for you and how that plays in your life is really important. And you're being required to make these adjustments fast. You don't have time to process it. You don't have time to build this huge plan. And you just need to get it figured out, especially if you're homeschooling kids. You know, I think there's going to come a point when all of this begins to die down and we kind of integrate more back into the 3-dimensional world, as I call it. But at this point, where there's going to continue to be a lot of anxiety and, you know, sadness and anger over all of this. And the hard part is there's no like one person or thing to be angry at. You can be angry at the coronavirus. The coronavirus doesn't care. So, you know, it's also, where do you place that? Hopefully not on your partner or on your kids, but I think people are also struggling of what do we do with all of these emotions right now?
Totally. And I think one thing that's going to be really interesting with this, and I think it'll obviously vary between people who are living alone and then people who are with family and have almost like someone that they could take it out on, mm-hmm. is just growing that awareness and taking the time to heal from any sort of consistent or like limiting belief patterns that might be showing up in the body and especially being triggered right now. Mm-hmm. I know I was just talking yesterday about this, that I was feeling this, by the way, of course I have the weed whacker like guy outside my window today.
Wow. Yeah. Can
you hear it?
I can't. So that's the good news. They were hammering away at our neighbor's house. So I was like, I'm hoping that they'll keep that down.
Yeah. So it's like, okay, the house is burning down. It's all good.
It's all good.
And noticing what emotion is coming up. and feeling, noticing a sense of anxiety around not feeling that I can be responsible or play my responsible role with my partner if some of our finances start to look a little different.
Right.
And really looking at that and going like, okay, what's that feeling? And it's not about my partner. It's about whatever's happening in the world where nothing has actually physically happened yet. Like everything is exactly the same in tangible form, but the possibility of what's coming is where that anxiety plays in. And then just actually having to give yourself a moment. And if you're at home, you have more of those moments, hopefully, to sit there and go like, okay, where is this coming from? Because there's nothing on the outside that's actually changed physically in this moment. Right. It's just the thoughts that go with it.
Yeah. Well, and so a lot of that, a lot of those pieces that come up, which is really where I love the meditation that's being done on the platform, because this is a lot where mindfulness comes in, is the ability to notice our thoughts and emotions. But, first and foremost, thoughts aren't facts, neither are emotions. And kind of one of the biggest metaphors around mindfulness that I like to use is that it's basically, if you think about suitcases at baggage claim, and mindfulness is just, your suitcases are these thoughts that are just going by, and mindfulness is just, you're just noticing them. You're not picking them all up. You're not taking them all with you. You're just like, oh, that's a red one. Oh, that's a large one. That's, there's a stroller, and they just continue to go by. But if you get stuck on like, oh, there goes that stroller. Where's that stroller going? Like, is it going to go through the chute? Like, what's happening? Like, you're missing a bunch of different things. And, the other piece is, even if you try to like pick up all of these thoughts at the same time, you're not gonna be able to do anything. You're gonna be so overwhelmed and paralyzed by A, the weight of all these suitcases, and you don't have enough hands, but B, like, you're not gonna be able to take any action around it. And so just being able to notice the thoughts, and ones that you feel like you really need to pick up and examine, that's where you can kind of do some checking the facts around that. Like, does this thought fit the situation? Does my emotion fit the situation? And, well, based off of this, this, and this, no, it doesn't really. Okay, yet I'm still feeling this way. How can I cope with that?
I love that self-inquiry. Yeah, absolutely. Those are really, really great tools. It would be cool to just have like those couple of questions written out as well, because I think they apply to so many scenarios, especially when we're trying to reduce the possible projection of emotions coming up for an innocent bystander.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's also important to like own your side of the street. Like, collectively, I say, very professionally to my clients, like, what's your shit and what's their shit? Like, and understanding what your stuff is. And it's like, is this my stuff? Or is this really about the interaction that I'm having with this person? Or is it their stuff? And being able to at least identify, like, what is yours, and if you are effectively coping with it and managing it, is going to also make a big difference in how you communicate, whether it's with your partner, your kids, or if you're living on your own, with even people, that you're hopefully connecting with on Zoom. That's another thing. I hope people are still continuing to connect, even though you can't really go out. That's also super important. But yeah, again, really taking some ownership over what is yours, because those are the things that you have control over. You do have control over how you respond in situations. That is 100% something that you have control over.
Yes. And I think right now, when it feels like we don't have control over anything else in our life, that then having the opportunity to focus on the things that we can control, being what we do, our actions, what we think, and then what we say out loud, how those thoughts become words.
Well, and also, like, there's a lot of kind of thinking traps that we can fall into, or like automatic negative thoughts that come up for us. And it's important to understand, and we all experience them, especially kind of this whole catastrophic thinking trap that the world is going to end, it's all bad, and of course, not everyone thinks that way, but we all kind of fluctuate through some of these, different thinking traps. And the important part is being able to understand them and identify them, and being like, whoa, that's, like black and white thinking or all or nothing thinking. That's really black and white. Like, is there a way I can begin to think about that differently? So there's ways that we can catch these when they're happening and try to have a better understanding of where it's coming from, what it means for us, and how we can think about it differently moving forward, because our emotions will also change in response to that.
I love it. Yes, this is so good. I was talking to another friend of mine the other day, and instead of using this kind of like watching those thoughts go by and seeing them as luggage, which I really like, it was more like you'll have animals. In this example, it was animals, and you'll have one on a leash and be like, dude, where are you going? Like, why are you running so far? But you'll see your pets, essentially, that you have some pets. But I love how it's moving through the same kind of thought process of just the awareness of them and being mindful of them is like one of the best things we can do. And realistically, I think as we're having this conversation right now, it's just reminding me that, you know, you have an option. You have an option if you want to get so caught up in your thoughts, or if you want to shine some light on them in a different way and just kind of touch into them and just give yourself the space now that you're at home for a period of time and go, okay, where is this coming from? Does it actually apply? Is this something happening in reality? Just as you're expressing, I think it's so good. So helpful. So the other thing that we were kind of touching on that I feel like I want to still go back to, because I know that I have mom friends.
Yes.
And what other kind of insights do you think that you could share without knowing what their circumstances are for parents who have young kids right now that are like either trying to figure out, how do I explain to kids who are old enough about what's going on in the world? What do I do here? Like, how do I manage my own anxiety without it becoming my kids' anxiety as well, because they're so sensitive? But so kind of looking at some of those things.
Yeah, and that's a really phenomenal question, because I think sometimes as parents, we have to be really mindful of what we're bringing to our kids. Like if our kids see that we're highly anxious, they're going to be like, oh, there's something's unsafe or dangerous around here. Maybe I need to experience anxiety too. You know, similarly, like when you go to the grocery store and you see like empty shelves and kind of all this pandemonium around food, it's because the collective anxiety has been driven up in a lot of ways by just kind of what you see. I think you and I were talking about like just even a journey to like Trader Joe's. Like I wasn't anxious walking in, but then, you know, when I walked in, I was like, oh my God, like, you know, what am I missing? Like everyone else here is like so anxiety ridden. And I'm like, maybe I need to be anxious. Like what's going on? So it can definitely, our environments can definitely impact our anxiety. I digress. But one tip that I really want to offer moms, especially, is be kind to yourself. Like you absolutely have to be kind to yourself and patient with yourself. There's no blueprint on how to do any of this. I mean, you can read all the kids' education books in the world, but I don't think anyone's written on like a book on how to parent in the time of global pandemics. Like if that's on Amazon, great. I haven't looked for it, but I think it's essentially understanding and giving your kids the space, like to maybe say, yeah, this is probably feels a little confusing that you're not going to school anymore right now, or that you can't go to the park, if your kids are verbal in that capacity. And then trying to offer an explanation of, you know, well, right now, like there's one thing I use with younger kids is that there's a special bubble around like grandma and grandpa, or like there's a special bubble around the park, because right now we want to make sure that it stays safe, or grandma and grandpa don't get sick, because there's a lot of germs in the air right now that, you know, grandma and grandpa are pretty susceptible to, and we want to make sure that we're not passing them to them, or that we're passing it to our friends, because, you know, friends don't give friends germs, whatever philosophy works with that. But I think, and also really offering your kids the space to be able to express their feelings about it. Like it's not fair that they don't get to go back to school and they don't get to see their friends. 100%. Like there's been, for older kids especially, there's a lot of tears around that. And, or that they don't get to do their activities, their sports or their swimming and things like that. And I think really as parents, all we can do is offer them the space to have their own grief and to have all of their own feelings about that, and ask questions in a way that we feel comfortable answering honestly and depending on their age. And you can even, what I think can be really helpful is you can even join with them. It's like, yeah, I feel really sad too. Or, sometimes I get anxious too, because, it's just an uncertain time right now. And so that also can be really validating and help them feel that they're not as alone, and say, things will, return to the way they were, hopefully sooner rather than later. But, just know that this isn't permanent, but I just can't tell you how long it's going to last at this point.
I really appreciate that, and opening up the conversation so it becomes more of like a very safe place to share and discover together about what you as a parent might be experiencing, which then also gives your kids the permission to have their own experience, and then just to be like, yeah, we are all experiencing something and it's okay, and then give them the space to process. And I really, really appreciate that. Absolutely.
Yeah, and I think, well, and the other piece with the moms, because I've experienced this myself, because our kids, in response to all of these, changes in their routines, there's a lot of acting out, there's a lot of behavior. So your patience is like, oh my God. And so honestly, if you need to go in the closet for like 5 minutes and cry, do it. Like, seriously, just take some space, because we're now managing everything, and dads are too. Everybody's managing things that before, maybe you were able to send your kid off to daycare or to school or whatever, where you were able to just have one focus, whether that's work or time with your partner. If you're a stay-at-home mom, you were able to have all the times you needed to do the things that you do in the service of keeping the household and the family running. And all of that is all. And so how do you kind of sort that out for yourself? And I think, again, going back to the being kind to yourself and giving yourself a lot of grace, there is no playbook for this. And a part of that really walks back to the structure and the self-care. Self-care is much more important now than it ever was. And defining what that means for you, because some people are like, oh, self-care, it takes too long. I don't have an hour to work out. Thank you, Shannon, for the HIIT workouts, because now there's not an excuse. They're literally 15 or 20 minutes. And sometimes that means maybe waking up before your kids get up, or maybe it means a smaller self-care activity, like 5 minutes of meditation or mindfulness. Because sometimes self-care activities can't be super long. They just have to be small ways that we can check in with with ourselves, and a couple minutes of deep breathing. Or if you're driving to the grocery store or going for a walk, maybe just turning off all the sound and just driving and being in silence, whatever works for you. But you don't need a ton of time for self-care. You really don't. It can be 5 minutes, and if you're lucky, 5 hours, awesome. But right now is when it's needed the most.
Yeah, I'm so with you. That I'm with you on that, because I'm like, okay, how do we structure the day so it's pockets of self-care? So that you can go ebb and flow into your work schedule, and then you can come back into more self-care. To basically continue to bring yourself back into that foundation, and then you can go and muddy up everything mentally or emotionally or whatever comes at you, and you have some sort of stable platform to come from, which can be really hard with everything that's going on right now. But yeah, it's nice to hear that confirmation.
Validation complete.
Just like, yes, mindfulness, movement, moving the body really gets the endorphins in. Definitely can be a great reset. It can be a great reset also if you're really upset about something or you want to scream into a pillow. I find that working out is that for me most of the time.
Yeah, it's really, it's extremely, extremely helpful. It's a great stress release, and, working out, yes. But also one thing that we haven't touched on is the eating and the drinking, which is really interesting for a lot of people, I think, because people also eat to cope with emotions. And especially, I had one client phrase it, she's like, I went through all of my quarantine snacks in like 3 days. I'm like, what are quarantine snacks? And she's like, I went out to the store specifically and bought quarantine snacks. And I'm like, cool. And she's like, yeah. And now I need to like run for the next 3 days straight because these were supposed to last me for weeks. And here I was sitting at home bored and also trying to like manage my own anxiety. So I just ate all of my quarantine snacks. And so it's also ensuring that, you know, yes, maybe how we eat is having to change for a little while or a little bit, but how you can still maintain the balance that feels best for you in terms of what you're eating. Same thing with drinking, you know, where it doesn't have to be this, well, now I, you know, can go to work in my pajamas. I can drink that whole bottle of wine versus, you know, just a glass. So also being mindful of how we're using some things to maybe cope in ways that aren't so helpful versus kind of more positive coping skills.
Absolutely. And it's funny that we waited till the last to talk about food, since that's you're in my like niche area. I feel like I bombard clients with food talk so much, but I think that it's just another it's another area to place awareness in our life and to build a schedule around.
Yeah.
Like I have my quarantine snacks in a place where it isn't really easily accessible.
Right. I like that.
It's not the first thing that I look at when I open up the cupboard. Like the first thing I look at is like all of the healthy stuff because it's fresh and, you know, and that's what I want to consume first. I keep my quarantine snacks almost like in a cabinet that I never really look at. And then I forget that they're there because now we've gotten so much food.
Yes.
That I don't even know what we have anymore. Like I need an inventory guy.
Yeah, you have lots of food. I mean, some people have lots of toilet paper. It's really, you know, whatever is going to make you feel stable in these moments. But, and, you know, I think this can be a conversation for a later point in time, just from a mental health perspective and your relationship to food. How are you using food, or in some cases not using food, to fuel your body? But, and also from just even like, a substance abuse perspective, like how are you engaging in your alcohol, and if you use drug use, you know, if people smoke marijuana and now they're like, well, I don't have to go into work, I can get high all day. How effective is that going to be for you?
Absolutely. Yes. So people get to decide. I think it's really a slippery slope because it's so easily accessible now, especially, to just move into that abuse of whatever it is, or just excess in all the ways, actually. Yeah. Whether it's excess of news or excess of food or excess of substance. It's just, we are in a position now where almost like there's no parent around. If you are an adult and you're living by yourself, now you don't have anyone to really report to. You don't have to wear pants. And you can pretty much do everything behind the scenes, which is something that I actually did not think about yet.
Yeah.
This is fascinating. I think this is another conversation.
Yeah.
This whole topic is such a big one.
I have a whole gamut of stuff I could say about it, and things that are helpful around it. But also just even that you're noticing that this is happening for you, because, you know, also a lot of like the joking parent memes are going around. It's like, how is it that there's still so much booze left on the shelves, but we're out of toilet paper, given now that we're all homeschooling and taking care of our kids? And I'm like, that's a great question. That's a tough call. But so yeah, the level of stress is rising. And are you using drugs and alcohol to cope with that too? Or are you using other things, you know, because now maybe the stress has doubled down and you're just kind of like, yeah, I exercise and then I'm going to drink all the booze too. It's like, okay, but I don't know how effective that's going to be for you in the long run.
Totally agree. I'd say this is part of our second segment.
Segment dose.
Yes, segment dose. Yeah, because it's such a big topic and there's so much to share in there in terms of like strategies, and also like the biochemical effects of what actually occurs in your body when you don't have a balanced diet coming in, when you train and then you don't eat and then you drink later, and like how that really just compounds anxiety as well. Not to mention our immune system. Oh yeah.
But also just even how with the chemistry within our own brain, you know, if you think about what alcohol does to your brain, what in terms of basically it's a depressant, even though we use it to de-stress, or some people say to take the edge off, but alcohol is a depressant. And so when you're exercising, you're activating different portions of your brain that are giving you those endorphins and the dopamine that you need. And so we're coming in and we're like, oh, I'll just have a glass of wine and maybe a couple glasses of wine and I'll feel better. And it's like, I don't know in reality if you do.
Nope. It's usually not the case.
Yeah.
Especially, I would say especially with wine for that reason. Oh my gosh. Okay. We could go on and on and on. But I will say, I think you've given us like some really incredible tools already. And kind of as I wrap it up, it sounds like it's looking at awareness, like really putting a spotlight on where you are choosing to place your attention, your awareness. Are you looking at the thoughts that come in? Are they really applicable? How are you scheduling your life and how are you coping? And just bringing some light to it and taking some time to just look at it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, the other piece is now like that people are home. It's a really great time for just, picking up projects or things if you have the time to be able to do some of those things, but also time to take care of yourself. Like one thing I've seen some more clients come in, not only because of all the stressors, but the actual convenience of like, oh, I'm at home. I can do this on a computer. I don't have to take an hour to go down to someone's office and then come back and, or it's in the middle of my workday. Like all of these different things, it's, supportive resources are now much more accessible and, easier for clients to access. So if you're feeling like you do need more support, it's very readily available. You don't have to leave your house.
So true. Oh my gosh. And like, can you imagine going through this time without the internet?
I can't. I don't know. I don't know what I would do.
It would be a very different experience. But now I'm really glad that you brought it to like a positive.
Yeah.
Like, silver lining is that we really have access to quite a lot and we save on driving time.
Mm-hmm. A lot of people get 2 hours a day back just on saving on their commute. And so in identifying kind of what that gratitude component can be and what you can do with that time can also be a big kind of, I don't want to say silver lining because it's just something that can be really positive right now.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Yes. Thank you for reminding me because I get that benefit. Drive time.
Yeah, 100%.
Well, thank you so much. This was awesome. I definitely want to do another segment.
Yes, absolutely.
And for those of you who are watching, thank you for joining. If you do want to get in touch with Jill, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
So the best way to get in touch with me will be the information that Shannon posts, I know after this, but the number that she posts, you can call me or text me. I'm available I'm offering free 15-minute consults for people if they're just kind of wanting to talk about what's coming up, stressors. One thing I do want to highlight is I am not a crisis line. So if you are feeling suicidal or if you have urges to hurt yourself, please contact a crisis line or head to your nearest ER. Or if your kid has burned down your house, I'm not going to be able to help you with that. So please call the fire department. But I am available again, like I mentioned, for a free 15-minute consult if you just want to check in and you're like, hey, I need some coping skills, or hey, like, can you give me some ideas on how I can structure my day or communicate with my partner, work this out. So yes, I am available for that because we're all in this together at this point. So.
That's so awesome. Thank you. Thank you for just reaching out to me and also for providing this for everyone who's watching. I think this is amazing. And just like you said, we are all in this together. And I think this is just another opportunity just to continue to support the community.
Right.
And to connect in a new way that we've never been able to before. So it's so crazy. And I think there are lots of positives coming from it, but it's so amazing to have your gold nuggets that you share with us. So this is awesome.
Well, and I love what you and Lisa have done on this platform. And I think all the services that are offered are really wonderful and necessary, especially now more than ever. And I think because there is the whole total wellness piece is so important. We're realizing it's not one over the other, but it has to be all of these things in play in order for it to be effective it's vital. And the fact that you're offering these wonderful resources to the community at large for free. I've appreciated your workouts in my garage as much as I don't enjoy working out in windowless garage spaces, but I'm like, you know what? This is fantastic. So I will take it.
Exactly. So good. I'm so glad I can join you in your garage. Okay,
Yeah.
we'll sign off for now. Thank you so much, Jill, and thank you everyone for watching. Stay tuned for lots more, and you will be able to find the details to contact Jill at the links in below the video.
Cool.
Thank you so much, and have a wonderful day.
Bye.